Guys, we're here with Ferocca, who placed in the Duelist Melee on Tuesday. Brought a pretty interesting Kaleos deck that we're gonna hear a little bit more about, and then we'll talk a little bit about the sideboard. So, what's the general idea of this deck? The general strategy you were going for?
Uh, the main strategy was to um, overwhelm in the early game with free trades through backstab. So the ideal turn one is either Katara or Kaido Assassin, and then in the mid game to get up back on cards with Sojourner and Jammer, and then to serve out the game with Zendo, which is the main win condition. So it's uh, the early game has to be some kind of overwhelming, and the free trades from either Miss Dragon Seal or Juxtaposition are very important. Besides Katara and Kaido Assassin, you can also get free trades with Juxtaposition and Obscuring Blow on your own general by placing a minion behind your back, putting blow on your own face, which is usually better than on a minion because it's harder to remove um, a spell attached to your own face than a spell on a minion. Minion removal is everywhere, of course. And then you juxtapose, and like the old Mask of Shadows, you just kill something for free. It's 1 mana, 4 damage, and you don't take any strike back damage. So it's, if it works out, it's good. Well, which is the problem with those kind of combos is the amount of cards, which is why it's really important not to mulligan any Sojourners or Jammers if your hand allows you to. I don't really, like in my starting hand, I would rather um, mulligan a turn 2 play like Key Beholder than a Jammer. Uh, it's just too important to get your cards back. Key Beholder is pretty much there because I don't want to run real removal. After all, it's a rather aggressive deck, and I don't want to waste it on real passive spells or minions. Key Beholder is pretty perfect for that. Also sets up backstab usually, because if you are player 2 and you freeze the opponent's turn 1 play, then they still have to walk forward, and the minion that got stunned still has to stay in the back, and there is no way that they are going to stay near the minion. Uh, or But the freezing effect is actually most important on that turn one, uh, just to deny a 4-drop, and it's really hard to react in a way to keyboard holder turn one that you can remove it and develop, because you will have um, pretty much the only way to deal with key beholder turn 1 and develop yourself is 2-drop on the front mana tile and then play a 2 mana removal. But not every faction has a 2 mana removal for key beholder, and if they do, then sometimes they only have one, like Vitruvian only has Russia's Curse. And if you do it against Magmar, then it's really problematic for them, because you can play around Tiger turn 1 by going diagonal and then placing it diagonal into the corner. Then it protects against Rush, and because you froze their turn 1 play, they can't natural select it. And then there is really only one option, and that's Thumping Wave. So especially against Magmar, it's really good. Against Tempo Lionar, it's amazing because again you can play around Tiger, and they usually play Lightbender and not Sunbloom, which means that they usually can't actually answer uh, the Key Beholder turn 1 if you play around Tiger. Which means that next turn you kill their Azure Lion or Windblade Adept for free before they Tiger it next turn, and then they already are quite behind. If you shoot the 2-drop for free and then they still need to Tiger it, then you're basically a whole 2-drop ahead. Um, Battle Pando is sort of it started as a tech card actually, Battle Pando, because this deck would automatically lose to Swarm Lilith if you don't play it, or it would automatically lose to Jax, because Venna can usually stall until 6 mana, because even though this deck is fast, the removal is too good to kill them before they could play Jax, which means that you mill a lot for this card, and uh, like when just on the turn that they will be able to play that 6 mana, then before the turn you just play it, which means that you just checked Jax because they need at least 1 mana to get rid of its ability. And yeah, against Lilith it's straight up necessary. It's great in the Songhai Mirror because the removal is damage, so its ability will take effect for sure, which means that it's incredibly awkward to place Heart Seekers, um, or in general to keep your minions healthy, because with the 4 health, it's also very likely that they will have to hit it twice. So you basically play a 3/4 that gets rid of Blood Rage Mask and Tempest the board at the same time, and it's pretty much guaranteed to do this, due to how most Songhai decks look like. Against other factions, it's still a good value drop. Uh, Whatever it attacks, it's a 3/4, and then it pings the whole board. There is a reason everyone runs Blood here, because those pings are great. They really help you control the board. Sometimes, for example, if it pings Silverguard Knight, then now your Kado Assassin can kill it with Mist Dragon Seal before it would just fail to kill it. But it started mostly as attack against Lilith, because I would automatically lose against her and against Jax. And Gravity Well could sometimes be annoying, even though it doesn't matter too much. It does slow down the game too much sometimes if you don't have it. Um, so that's also why I kept it when I noticed how damn good it was. Also against Gassiva to get rid of Abyssal Crawlers, and they play Ooze, so then you put a Pando in front of it and all the crawlers die with the Ooze. There's just too many situations in which it pressures or clears the board, and it's a really proactive way, because you could also play Ghost Lightning, but that's not a minion, which is also bad for Kaleos don't uh, if you don't develop a minion, because his Bloodborne spell is absolutely useless without something on the board. Um, when it comes to choosing Kaleos at all, it was more that I just wanted to make him work, because I find I sort of had this nostalgic feeling towards Kaleos, because he used to be so feared when before Reaver was released. Songhai has been strong many times, and I was always like, damn, this sucks that this cheese ranged general is so much better than Kaleos. So it was a bit of a nostalgic challenge to make him work. Um, it could very well be that this deck is better with Riva anyway, but I do just know that Obscuring Blow is not that good in Riva. I tried it in Riva and it's just too inconsistent. That's one of the few cards that is better in Kaleos, the other one being Onyx Jaguar. But all the other cards are probably better in Riva, especially Killing Edge in the focus, of course. But against something like Kasiva, or then Kaleos Bloodborne spell might be a tiny bit better, because you can pretty much only play Reaver's Bloodborne spell against Kasiva if you combine it with Inner Focus and Killing Edge. Against Magmar, I also really like Kaleos Bloodborne spell, because I can almost always play around Macanthe. Almost always. It's not really even that good against this deck, Macanthe. I don't really fear it. I find Plasma Storm, Natural Selection, much more concerning than Macanthe. Um, against against nobody else, I don't think that the Kaleos Bloodborne spell is better than Reva's. It's almost always better, but uh, I do think that Kaleos Bloodborne spell is more fun and more tactical because it's a bit with Reva's Bloodborne spell you can just play it and then it has to be answered and that's it. While Kaleos Bloodborne spell means that you need to take some preparation to um, make good use of it next turn. There are ways to position it for backstab that it becomes really awkward for them to walk out of blink range, and you can take advantage of that and make their positioning bad because they have to. They have to position bad, otherwise uh, something like a tower that they can't answer gets a kill for free. And um, in the initial deck there was also Jaguar I because I realized that it was one of few cards that is better in Kaleos than in Riva. Um, but when the last expansion hit, I found it had become too much of a meme because it was just too slow, too situational. I didn't have a board often enough due to the new removal, and if I did have a board, it was too slow. I just died to Entropic Gaze if I played something like Jaguar, and it got removed for a third Sendo, which I noticed was even better than I first thought. And that was the decision in this deck that I have never regret to go from 2 Zendo to 3. It was absolutely necessary. Having Zendo on curve, at least having the option, is so much better than not having that option. It's insane. And I almost always play it if I have it on 6 mana. Uh, Zendo also, the third Zendo also made Obscuring Blow a lot better. You can place Zendo in such a way that 1 or 2 turns later you can almost always get Obscuring Blow value. And if you get Obscuring Blow value, it's pretty insane because it's 1 mana 4 damage and nothing, and there is no damage taken from it. So it's basically like what Training Wave wanted to be: 4 damage, 1 mana, but you don't destroy your own face. Because if you play Zendo, you can force them to get off the wall, and yeah, you can almost always set up for blow in the next one or second turn because they lose control over the positioning, which is what makes Zendo so insane. That their opponent loses the control of their positioning, which also means that Zeno is one of the few 6-drops that you can play at all, but also one of few 6-drops that you can play when you're behind, because usually you can place in such a way that a minion that is near the enemy general gets blocked by their own general because of your own Zendo positioning. So you can usually do 4 damage to their face, develop a threat, and stun an enemy minion, and you played only 1 card that turn, which so your hand size also keeps healthy. And if they don't deal with Zendo, then you killing edge it and then you win, um, which is especially against something like Vitruvian is pretty easy to pull off. You just play Zendo in a corner and next turn you Miss Dragon Seal killing edge it. Um, and against something like Temple Lionar, this also works very often because they don't run Sunbloom but Lightbender, which is also why Temple Lionar is generally not that good against this deck. Only Arclight Regalia can be problematic and face damage. Uh, and another deck that this deck is favored against that I found very surprising uh, is Vanar. You do have to be patient somewhat, but I just don't really lose against Vanar with this deck. Uh, the main objective against Vanar is to keep your hand full, to find all you draw, and especially Jammer, because you always draw from Jammer. It can't really be answered, you could say. And they the decks that the Venom decks that are running around at the moment are so weak to Zendo, because if you play Zendo, you're almost always certain that something sticks on the field, be it a 3/3 wolf, which you can, for example, blink obscuring blow, or just killing edge it, be it a 4/2 after chromatic cold. Um, it doesn't die to frostburn as a 4/4. Um, there's it doesn't die to half sister BBS. Uh, it just is pretty guaranteed to leave something on the board against Venom for some reason. They don't really kill minions that often anymore, but leave something behind. And at that point, that's usually dangerous against Songhai, especially because you just took 4 damage, and in the turn before that you took other points of damage. Um, let's see. The other thing that was important to, I think that was pretty much, yeah, I talked about Pando too. Sojourner and Jammer kind of speak for themselves, they draw cards. I think that's it for the main deck.
Right. What would you say are the difficult matchups, and kind of how are you trying to address those with your sideboard?
I think Cassiva is the worst matchup. It used to be really good for Kaleos because her, there was once this time that Shroud and Demonic Laura were her only ways um to deal with Kaleos stuff, which means that Hammond used to be attack against her, but Punish is just too good now against that, because Lure is very bad against this deck if you use it to put something away. I have 6 spells to bring something back, and otherwise Blink will speed it up if I don't find any of the 6 movement spells. Um, but luring something to her is strong. It deals with both backstab minions and with Key and with Chakri. Um, but Punish totally changed this matchup. That it really went from favored for Kalios to totally favored for her. And what also doesn't help is the rework of Abyssal Juggernaut. That thing is pretty much impossible to deal with if you don't run real removal or dispel, which this deck does not. Um, so you really have to plan ahead for Juggernaut and probably hold on to Key. Um, and of course, juxtaposition plays can stall a Juggernaut for long. The problem is that it's only a 4 drop, so so they don't lose. It's not that much of a risk against Key to play it. It's not like a Vorpal Reaver, which if you stun it with Key, you really put them on a clock, because it's basically like if you developed a ranged threat and a Hailstorm Prison at the same time. Um, a 3 drop threat and a Hailstorm Prison at the same time, but against a 4 drop, they probably don't care too much. So I usually first have to stun it, and then have to invest too many cards like Blink and then Juxtaposition, or Misdirect and Seal my own minion and then Juxtaposition to really take it out of the game. And if Cassiva stalls long enough, which she can, of course, because of Kalino and other amazing heals, then it will come back, and it will be back even bigger, because there has been made more creep. So Abyss Juggernaut and Punish, the the release of those cards really changed that matchup. And then Revenant is great against everyone, of course, for which you should also plan. I think a great way to plan against Revenant is to place something behind you, which you do a lot as Kalios anyway, because you can play everything in his deck very safe, and it doesn't even matter if you teleport a movement spell, because what are they gonna do about it? They either deal with it or they don't, and it's only against Venar I would say that you should care a bit about placing it not too safe, because as I said, they usually leave a body behind. Um, and for Venar, it also doesn't matter at all where the minion is to remove it. But against Cassiva, for example, you can play around Shroud at least. Uh, which is pretty can be pretty big if you just place a chakri as far as you can. They can do major damage because they can't shroud it. They have to find punish. Um, but oh yeah, how you prepare against revenant? You place something as far in the back as possible and hold on to obscuring blow, which is really good at revenge killing these kind of rush minions. As long as you put it far back, you can always revenge kill it with obscuring blow, which then again means that you have to watch out with playing Sojourner and Katara or an unboosted Chakri at Revenant turns, because then it's at 5 HP and it won't die to blow. But yeah, that's the main problem with Cassiva, that unlike Fenar, if she removes something from your board, she can play a big threat after it. Fenar doesn't really do that. And you will notice if you play this deck that it usually does okay against Cassiva in the first turns, but around 6 or 7 mana it flips, because then she plays 2 mana removal plus Juggernaut or a Revenant, and then she usually starts winning. And you can't often finish the game before that because of her sustain and her removal again. Um, and Zendo is also Zeno is great against almost everyone, but not so great against Cassiva because of punish again. Um, Revenant always kills it, and if you place it close, then Shroud also somewhat deals with it. Or if you just can't play around Juggernaut killing it, that sometimes happens too. That you don't have it on the play, then Zendo in range of the Juggernaut, and then it just kills it, because as I just said, Juggernaut is really hard to deal with for this deck, which is also why Paragon is in this tag list. Paragon is pretty amazing against Cassiva. It deals with random Deotas, but mostly those Juggernauts and Revenants, which are really the main threat. It's also there for Lilith, which I think is the second worst matchup for this deck, because 3 Pandos, if you don't find any of them, you lose. And if you do find one of them, then it's not actually automatically a win. They can stabilize from a Pando. It's really awkward for them to deal with it, but they can. Mostly they need to give up their swarm that they just developed, but they can re-establish that pretty easily. So Paragon was also there for Lilith. It kills pretty much everything but Ziggs. And then I also like the fact that it dealt with Mechazor, because this deck can be very aggressive and win fast against a mech deck, but sometimes you actually get mech'd and it's like just too early and you have to answer it. Then I thought it was a nice bonus that besides being great against Abyssian, that it was also attack against Mechazor, and besides Abyssian it also can be solid against other decks. I, for example, tagged it in against Monk Business Magmar deck, because he played Mandrakes and Sunsteel Defenders and Grove Lions and Macante and Drogon. It pretty much killed all threatening things. Especially Mandrake turns is something this deck can't deal with. If they just play 2 Mandrakes or a Sunsteel or 2-drop and a Mandrake, then you really need Paragon. Lantern Fox was attack against decks that can stall well, and that is mostly a war of cards in your hand. Like I mentioned before, against Fenar, this deck just wins if you can keep your hand healthy and draw your Zendos. And also, Key Beholder is really bad against Fenar. Pretty much everything answers it, and and especially Harv Sister is extremely punishing against Key Beholder. It's just really bad against Fenar. It always gets answered in a very efficient way. dies to Frostburn, um, while Fox is actually pretty awkward for Venar. If they chromatic cold it, you still have a 2-1. Um, if they aspect of the Fox it, they actually kind of buff it and still spend a card on it. If it dies in Frostburn, it gives you Phoenix Fire. Um, so with Fox, you're pretty much know that you have either a 2-1 or a Phoenix Fire, which is against Fenner that's quite a lot that you are sure that you get something out of it. So Fox's replacement for Key against Fenner, it's I also take it in against Kasiva because a way to remove things is by pinging and damaging them. So again, I'm pretty much guaranteed Phoenix Fires, except for Shroud, which I can pretty much always play around um, because of the way this deck is built, and Kaleos Bloodmore spell being able to place everything safe. Against Lilith, I also take it in, mostly because Swarm gets a bit easier to control with Phoenix Fires, mostly for Blood Moon, and also again because they only have Shroud to stop the Phoenix Fires from Fox. Um, and then I would consider Fox against Iran because the games can be very grindy. Oh, and of course in the Songhai Mirror, because it's just amazing in the Songhai Mirror. It gives me getting Phoenix Fires from Fox is important because if I don't, then in focus uh, Killing Edge on the Heartseeker can just win the game against this deck because if they don't take in Fox against in the Songhai Mirror, then my only answer will be minion, play a minion on my back, juxtaposition Obscuring Blow, which is 3 cards. So that's pretty far-fetched um, for something you have to answer. Besides that, Key Beholder is also really bad in the Songhai Mirror, so that's where Fox takes the place. But Fox is, for example, not good against Fav. It just suicides itself into everything, dies to Plasma Storm. Against Vitruvian, it's not so good because Phoenix Fire doesn't do so much against Vitruvian. It's their minions are pretty resilient to it, even their low drops, because they have 6 health or need 3 Phoenix Fires in case of packs. Um, and Repulsor Beast was purely there for the random Ironcliff Aegis barrier player. Basically anything greedy Lionar, that's what Repulsor Beast was for, and I thought that what I liked about Repulsor Beast as a tech is that it can also be used somewhat um, versatile, because you can also use it um, to Repulsor Beast something behind the Backstabber. So that it would become not, so it wouldn't be a dead card that often. If you play against Lionar and you're not sure yet what deck they are playing, you can just stack in Repulsor Beast, and if it turns out to be Temple Lionar, then you can still get 3 kills with a Repulsor Beast. And then on his Jaguar, that is mostly attack against certain playstyles and Plasma Storm, because only Miss Dragon Seal on a few minions protects against Plasma Storm and Killing Edge, and Sendo, which is a late game minion. So it was it's a bit of attack against Plasma Storm and against slow, greedy players that can't run Enfeeble. So I wouldn't take it. I wouldn't take it quickly against Fenar, but I would consider it against Iran, for example, which is not that good at removing my board, because Sunbloom leaves something on the board, and yeah, they usually only have Martyrdom to truly remove something, sometimes Circle of Life, but generally I can manage to stick 1 or 2 things against Iran if I play them safely. And her game plan is slow, so Jaguar automatically becomes a lot better. Um, and also it punishes people that hug the wall, because if they do that, uh, then next game I just sub out obscuring blows and put in jaguars. Then when they run back to the wall, I run back to my wall and just develop, and then I snowball much harder with jaguar than they can with whatever they want to do from a range distance. Um, it can really punish people that don't follow you and try to remove your stuff. And I think it's fine to camp Songhai. Um, Besides Jaguar, Zendo also really helps against wall huggers because if they hug the wall, they of course give you some mana tiles, and if you then find Zendo, you can get them off the wall very quickly again. Because two spaces off the wall is really enough to get in backstabs again. Or they can just lose to Zendo itself if you play it. If they don't answer it and you killing edge it, then they're pretty much dead. Um, so when it comes to bad matchups, I mentioned both Ambition Generals. Um, yeah, Valve is somewhat bad because of Plasma Storm and Natural Selection. Earthsphere in combination with his Bloodborne spell can also be uh, given too much value, especially card advantage wise. It's sometimes hard to buff your minions above Plasma Storm or Natural Selection, or just above his Bloodborne spell, counter killing your minions. Of course, you can place all these minions outside of his range, but at a certain moment you have to juxtapose or Mist Dragon Seal them for some value and tempo, and then the next turn he can usually revenge kill your minions, and that's fine if he doesn't draw any Earth Rays, because then he will just lose to Zendo in the late game if he takes too much damage. But if they do find Earth Sphere, that makes the matchup pretty hard. Um, and then the fourth matchup that I don't like too much is Riva, because her answers are entirely proactive and really cheap, especially something like Phoenix Fire, which is also why I would never play Key in a Songhai Mirror if I'm allowed to tech and put in the Foxes, because yeah, Key is good against everything that is not Songhai or Venar, because against Songhai and Venar it dies too easily. They have too many ways to deal with it efficiently. Also, stunning a minion against Songhai is it's a really big gamble, because they at least play three juxtapositions, I would assume, usually to miss Dragon Seals. Um, so that's also a bad idea. Uh, Riva, yeah, her answers are too proactive, and if you fall behind, she can become hard to answer. So against Riva, the matchup against Riva is not that bad. It's not like a Vision, but um, it's really a matter of not falling behind. If you uh, if you lose board against Riva with this deck and you don't have enough focus in hand, then her board becomes impossible to answer, and then she snowballs very fast. So so be ready to play things very safe and slow against her. Remove her board so that if she removes yours in a cheap way, it doesn't become impossible to answer. Also, her threat level is very high, so that's also why you should remove a board. Um, Obscuring Blow is pretty good against her usually. Uh, for example, it's if she in a focus Kataras you, then Obscuring Blow can revenge kill these kind of things very easily. Um, Also, our minions are have low toughness, so juxtaposition Obscuring Blow on your own face kills a lot. So that's a combo you can look for. As I mentioned before, it's the only way to deal with a Heart Seeker outside of some inner focus plays, uh, like a Heart Seeker with Killing Edge. And Dope Mulligan Battle Pando against her, it's too good. Um, and Zendo is very good against her too. If you keep her board clear and play Zendo, then she pretty much needs an inner focus play or lose. Um, but yeah, Ambition are really the worst matchups, and Valve and Riva, you you really have to watch out against them. The matchups are not that bad, but it's trickier, and they are slightly favored, I think. Um, I think that's the tech board, right? I talked about all tech options.
Yeah, thank you for going over that in such detail. So is this a deck that you would play again if you had a chance for a tournament, or would you do you think you'd go with something a little more mainstream?
Well, if I play a tournament, um, like a real this kind of tournament that you have to place multiple deck lists, that you have to bring three generals. Um, then I do bring this deck because it's like the deck that I'm most experienced with, and yeah, it's the I just won the tournament with it, which also makes me um, feel more confident with this deck than with other decks, uh, and it's a bit it's not as memey as it looks. I would say it's not. If you try it a lot, then you like last season I had more than it was like 72% win rate in S rank with it. It's um, it's not as memey as it looks. It can still do Riva things, you know. Not having a hard seeker doesn't mean that people just automatically lose against unanswered one or two drops, um, or that they don't lose to Sendo. Um, it's so yes, I would play this in other tournaments too, but that's mostly due to how comfortable I am with the deck. Um, and I would couple it with more try-hard decks. Yes, like the other decks that I would play would be more standard, but that's because I don't really have another half meme deck that I polished a lot. Because this deck actually took quite a long time to finalize. Um, it used to have only two Mist Dragon Seals, two Obscuring Blows, and two Zendos, for example, and it didn't have Battle Pando. There was a version with Heaven's Eclipse instead of Sojourners. Um, and well, I realized that if I wanted to make Obscuring Blow work, I can't play Heaven's Eclipse in place of Sojourners. Um, and yeah, I think that this deck has some surprisingly good matchups that people don't expect. Like against that for some reason it does very well against Venar. I think a lot of people think Venar is favored in the Sorai matchup because the removal is just too good. Um, so I think I could um, make some surprising wins again with this deck against something like Faye or against Tempo Lionar, which for example, Aggro Riva when that was really strong. I also really wondered why a lot of people said that Tempo Lionar was good against her. I just don't see it. I think Songhai is pretty good against Tempo Lionar because Tempo Lionar Songhai is really good at punishing decks that don't run too much removal. Tempo Lionar really only has Tigers and Lightbenders for removal. Lightbender you can play somewhat around, and Tiger you can play around in the first turn usually. Um, so I think you can surprise people that think that Temple Lionar is good against Songhai with this list too. Uh, Especially something like a free if you open backstab minion and then kill their Silver Guard with a juxtaposition and play a Sojourner, then they are so behind for a deck with no removal. They a 1/5 that draws cards and a really threatening one drop, and they have no board and only 4 mana. It's really hard for them to come back from that kind of thing. While something like Ziran has more of a 50-50 matchup because she actually play something like Martyrdom sometimes. And Circle of Light, I've noticed, is pretty good against this deck. It can be, uh, it's a good answer against Zendo, for example, but also just as a very slow stabilizer. Even though it's slow, it usually works for some reason. Uh, it, well, I think it's really purely because of the healing. In the end, it's an aggressive deck. You can't still have a full hand with this deck at 9 mana, I don't think, and they have Trinity Oath. So um, yeah, I would play it against those against Fae, Temple Linar, against Starhorn. Why not? Because it's Starhorn. I would play it against Vitruvian, even though obelisks are a bit of a bitch. I think this deck is just too good at camping and playing around Vitruvian's removal. Um, I would play, yeah, Ambition is then that one faction I wouldn't play it against. And in the Songhai mirror, mm, it's I would probably try to find another deck like Kasiva. If I would decide to play that in a tournament, I would rather bring Kasiva than this as a Songhai mirror. But yes, I will play this in another tournament.
Well, cool. Thank you so much for explaining it to us, and good luck. I think you're playing in the qualifier this weekend, so tomorrow-ish. So
Yep,
so good luck. Hope to see you do well. Thank you.
thank you.
Have a good day.
You too.